I'll call the meeting to order and make the following statement. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. Our panel today is, to my left, Mr. Harvey Diamond, to my far left, Mr. Marcel Laurando. I'm Robert Buss, the chair. Our secretary is Lindsay Wareham, and the recording secretary, did I say secretary? I meant assessor. Our assessor this morning is Lindsay Wareham. The secretary is Michelle Beacon. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that applicants make or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the other applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be a part of the public record. I'd like to swear in the applicants, assessors.
Lindsay Elliott.
Do you swear that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Can you state your full name, please?
Sid Story.
Do you swear that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, we will begin with item number 170 Gary Street.
As stated, we're looking at 170 Gary Street, file number 19-4138, roll number 12-093-194-000, and requesting that the burden of proof be placed on the applicant for non-cooperation as per section 53(3)(b of the Municipal Assessment Act, and if reduction in assessment is ordered, that it follows section 54(3.2) of the Municipal Assessment Act. I'm asking for that because if you turn to page 10 of my brief, and you look at the third paragraph down, it says, please note that a separate questionnaire is required for each roll number. Submitting one mailer covering multiple roll numbers is no longer acceptable. So then if you turn to page 12, you'll see the mailer that was submitted. So we have a blank cover page. They don't list that they have any parking stalls or parking rates. On page 13, they've indicated that the data is consolidated with 4 realty roll numbers. One of these is a vacant piece of land, one of them is a CMVSR, one of them is an office, and one of them is a parking lot. There's parking on 3 of the rolls, and so they have not differentiated how many stalls are on any of them. If you look on the mailer starting on page 14, we have a parking revenue that's listed, but again, we don't know how many stalls are attributed to each other than what's in our records. And then if you look at the mailer, the only parking lot expense that's listed is parking lot repairs. So we're unable to break out exactly what this parking lot is earning for income with respect to hydro on the site, if there's plugs, if there's plugs on the building site, what the snow removal costs are for each of them. So we're not able to break out this information. So the information has not been usable for us to figure out what's happening in these properties. Therefore, this is a request that we typically make on something like this if we're unable to use the information and break out what is happening, because we have requested that they do not combine mailers for that reason. We have to request that non-cooperation be applied in this case.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Story, do you have
Yes,
anything to
there's
say?
no, seemingly there's no follow-up letters on this?
No.
So why would the city not pick up the phone or ask yourself, I'm sure you know everything about this parking lot. Why would the city not try to get this information if they felt they needed it?
We're not responsible to be contacting people to give us information. We send out a letter with instructions. It's very clear what needs to be done. It's not our responsibility to be following up with people. And by the time these mailers get reviewed, it's significantly after the date that we have asked for these mailers to be in. We send out a request, the request and the information is clear, and we don't need to be following up with owners. There's legal cases that say we don't need to be following up.
Have you handled this property in appeal before?
Yes.
And you're aware how many stalls are in?
I know how many stalls there are, but because, and that's just one of the portions that they have, if they actually clearly labeled how much hydro, like I see multi-roll submissions, if they had clearly labeled 3 or 4 lines on the same mailer for the different roll numbers saying how much hydro was attributed to each, how much snow removal was attributed to each, separating out the property taxes, although we can do that, and the stall count, we have our numbers, but we don't know what they're charging for the stalls. They haven't filled it out. They haven't been able to break out what the repair and maintenance is for all of them. It just says parking lot repair and maintenance. There's parking on all of these rolls, so we don't know how much is attributed to each to know what this parking lot's actually making. Had they separated it out and put it on the same mailer, it would be a different story. But because they haven't separated out, we are unable to do that. And when I've handled this in appeal before, we were unable to separate it out then as well.
So you've handled this property with this owner in appeal before?
Not this owner,
Mr.
this
Story,
property.
I'll stop you. I think it's for us to decide if the information is adequate. It's for you to
Okay.
tell us if the information was maybe sent in or lost. Did you have any information about that?
No.
He's asking questions.
I was asking questions of her as to why no follow-up was done, why no second letter?
Okay.
Typically, you get a registered letter with a signature on it, there's nothing like that here. These are parking lots, they don't change from year to year, there's no better expert in the city than.
Okay,
Mrs.
well, we'll
Warren on
ask
this
if
matter.
was a registered letter sent out to
We don't send registered letters when we receive a mailer. We only send registered letters when there's a no response.
Okay.
So this is not a non-compliance, this is not compliance to your satisfaction.
We have sent out a very clear instruction. I have included the letter that was sent. It's very clear, it's underlined, it's in bold. Owners are aware, we've been putting this in letters since 2013. Owners know they're not supposed to be reporting information like this.
And to develop the assessment, you use a model, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And your model's 103.50.
No, the model has a range.
135 $135 per month. 103.50, I'm sorry.
There's a range in the model.
103.50. That's all my questions.
Okay, thank you. We'll see if the board have any questions. Mr. Diamond?
I have no questions.
Mr. Lordo?
How many times in the past has it been incomplete?
This is a new owner for this property, so last cycle it was a different owner, and it was reported the same way last cycle, but that's all I know, because this is only the second time I've handled this in appeal.
No further questions?
Can I have a follow-up, Mr. Chair?
You go ahead.
The new owner took it over when?
I'm not actually sure, to be
There's
honest.
a police car right up here on the sidewalk. You're not sure?
No.
So who would be obligated, who would be liable for filling out the questionnaire? There's been a change in owners. He didn't own it a year ago, or at the request date.
I don't have any notes on when the ownership changed. I know the agency has changed of who's handling this property, but I'm not actually 100% sure if the ownership has
But
changed.
you are aware that it was just recently acquired?
Unless you have any information on a sale and when it took place, and have any information on if the mail was sent to a different person or the wrong person,
Thank you, no.
our information stands.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Maybe I could ask you, Mr. Story, when it was, has there been an ownership change here?
Yes.
Do you know when?
It would have been, probably wrote post-reference, it would be latter part of 18, early part of 19.
You don't have an actual sale date?
No, there's a December 18 in the, in your
On
app.
page 4, you show that there was a registration on December 5th, 2018,
Yeah,
showing a declaring a value of $579 and a dollar consideration.
Okay. Then yes, it was December 5th, 2018.
it was acquired, Mr. Chair, it was acquired by the same gentleman who bought the old Legion on the corner.
Because it's a dollar sale, I'm assuming that the parties were probably similar because it's a dollar sale, but typically when you see a dollar, when you see a dollar sale price, usually the parties involved in the sale are similar parties.
I don't know
Unless,
if
unless Mr. Story can provide some sort of evidence that this is a brand new owner with different parties where our request stands.
Oh, you're aware it's a different owner. You're aware of that, you just told the board.
It's
That's
a
all.
different owner, but I guess the assessor
Certainly.
is saying that she thinks it was not an arm's length sale, they were known to each other. Were they known to each other?
Not at all, no. Mr. Delary bought it. It's the old Legion. He bought it because he was trying to develop the building next door and he didn't get the building next door.
He bought it for $1, someone
No, of
sold a
course not.
downtown
No, that's a
parking lot for
declared
$1.
value. That's a declared value.
When would this mailer have been required to be sent in, or was sent in, I guess? The fact that it was sent in.
It was sent in.
When
and
was it sent
wasn't
in?
followed up on by the,
Was it sent in by the old owner?
It was sent in, the same information that I saw previously on this property. I'm assuming it was sent in by the old owner.
it was Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, we will take a short break and, okay, we'll call the hearing back to order. And the board has decided that we will not grant the deferral, so whenever you're ready.
Perfect. So we're looking at a surface parking lot. Our records show there are 36 stalls. I'm recommending to maintain the 2020 assessed value of $1,158,000. If you look at page 2 of my brief, you'll see aerial photos of the subject property showing its location on the west side of Gary Street between St. Mary Avenue and York Avenue. On page 3, you'll see subject property photos. On page 4, you'll see income and expense and sale information. On page 5, you'll see land sales. These are land sales of downtown properties that have sold. We have 5 sales that they range from $65.90 upwards of $96.98. The time adjusted sale price ranges from $95.45 upwards of $118.04. I have included some other sales. These are smaller properties. We're gonna be focusing on the larger properties as this property is 12,122 square feet. On page 6, you'll see an income valuation summary. We have 36 stalls in file. We have a monthly net unit rent of $117 a stall for an annual net rent of $50,544 with a 4.5% cap rate, and then we have an income value on this property of $1,123,000. If you look at the bottom of page 6, these are comparables. These are all located in the subject property location. These are all in very, very close proximity. These are the area of the city that has the highest rates that they charge for surface parking, and they garner the highest rates, which is why our model monthly net unit rent is at our highest modeled rent for surface parking at $117 a stall, which is typically what we've been assessing properties in this area of the downtown for the 2020 cycle. My comparables, you'll see that they range from $100.09 upwards of $255.22. The furthest comparable that is not in the subject property location, it's just on the south side of Broadway, is comparable number 14. It's at 91 Edmonton Street. The remainder of the comparables, other than 416 Main, which is at Portage and Main, are all in neighborhood characteristic area 161, the South Portage, which is bounded by Balmoral, Portage Avenue, Main Street, and Broadway. So comparables numbers 1 through 11 fall in that location, and 330 Donald is on the corner of Ellis and Donald Street, so that's on the other side of Portage Avenue. We use a 4.5% cap rate for the 2020 reassessment. If you look on page 8, we have cap rate information. You'll notice that none of these are parking lot cap rates. These are property types that are reviewed by other companies that do market research for capitalization rates, such as Colliers, CBRE, and Cushman Wakefield. We then compare the cap rates from our model with the cap rates that other market companies look at. On page 9, you'll see Municipal Assessment Act information. You'll see the non-cooperation information. And then you'll see our addenda on page 25. I just want to reiterate that this is a 2020 reassessment. We're looking at evidence as of a reference date of April 1st, 2018. We're looking at the data from that reference date with respect to our models, and we're looking at everything with a fresh look as stated in legislation that we are required to do. So I just want to state that every cycle we look at new information, we take a fresh look at the data that's been given to us with respect to sales and cap rates, income information, and we apply our information that we look at and analyze every cycle every 2 years. On page 28, you'll see more cap rate information. Again, none of these are parking lots. But these are just further evidence that we have provided in our briefs. These are arm's length bonafide sales that have been verified and created a stabilized net operating income based on multiple years of income against a sale price. And if you look at the properties, we have office that range from 5.1 to 6.54%, retail properties that range from 3.1 to 7.4%, multifamily properties that range from 4.03 to 5%, and industrial properties that range from 4.97 to 8%. Parking lots are essentially vacant land that doesn't have a cap rate. Parking lots have less risk than improved properties because there are less capital costs that are involved. You don't have to be replacing roofs and things like that. You can replace fencing and do repairs to the parking lot itself with respect to the asphalt, but there are less capital costs involved. So when you're looking at cap rates of improved properties that are sitting around this 5%, 6% range, it doesn't make sense for something that's essentially vacant land that doesn't have a cap rate to have a cap rate that would be the same or higher than an improved property that has a significant amount of capital cost involved. Also, when you're looking at cap rate sales for parking lots, the difficulty with it is there are not a lot of sales. And when you do have the sales, you have to look at what they were sold for. Were they sold as an ancillary use? Did it sell and was redeveloped? So you have to be cautious when you're looking at cap rate sales for parking lots as well. I'm not saying that we throw them out entirely, you just have to look at them with a cautious eye. If you're looking at a property that sells and it's a parking lot in the downtown and you're looking and it has been redeveloped, typically if a parking lot sells and it's been redeveloped, if you take the income from the parking lot against the sale price, you're looking at a very low cap rate, a 1%, 2% cap rate, because that property wasn't purchased for the cap rate or the income of the parking lot. So when you're looking at properties that are that can be redeveloped, you're gonna see really, really low cap rates. You also see a range in cap rates for parking lots. There are cap rates that we see that are higher, but when we're looking at mass appraisal and doing mass appraisal, we have to look at what would be typical. So with that, looking at parking lots with a cautious eye, looking at the sales of improved properties, looking at what other companies are saying are happening with cap rates, that's why we're at 4.5% for the 2020 cycle for these properties in the downtown. That's my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Can I get some clarification?
Go ahead.
Do you want us using your number on the front page or your workup?
The number that's 1,158,000. I've provided two
What's your-
workups.
Where's the second workup?
I've provided two. One is on land at 1,158,000, and one is an income approach at 1,123,000. What we've been doing for properties this cycle, specifically in this area, neighborhood characteristic, area 161, the South Portage area that's bounded by Balmoral, Portage, Main Street, and Broadway. This is where we are seeing the highest parking rates, the land that is being redeveloped. There are sales of these are large properties in this area that we have that could be redeveloped. So what we've been doing is we've been bringing in two approaches to value, similar to an appraisal. So a direct sales approach, as well as an income approach.
So
To
that's the market income.
the
So which
previous,
pages are they on? I must
page
be missing.
5
Yeah.
and page 6.
Yeah, I don't have the 158.
I don't have the 158 number. Oh, no, yeah, we did.
Yes, you do. It's the far one in the column.
It's on page 5.
So similar to an appraisal where you have a direct sales approach and an income approach, because these properties could be redeveloped, we have this cycle started bringing in both approaches to value. Because when you do an appraisal, you want to look at your appropriate approaches to value. Typically, these parking lots in this area have been being purchased for redevelopment, could be purchased for redevelopment. So we're showing two approaches to value that we're then reconciling. So if you look at the modeled land value that has come up, which is the value under appeal at 1,158,000, as well as our modeled income, which is 1,123,000, we're showing two approaches to value with market evidence for both, showing they're right in line with one another. That's why there are two there.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, we'll continue with Mr. Story. Do you have any questions of the assessor?
Yes. You've used a different rate for the model on this particular property. You've used 117 per stall.
Our model has a range, and the highest number on the range is 117. And in this area of the downtown, we have been consistently using $117 for these properties in this area.
Have you not been suggesting that that should be the rate used in the shed district downtown?
This is that area.
That's the rate.
Yes.
Okay. And what's the south bound of the shed district?
The shed is actually a portion of NCA 161. It's a couple streets in that area, and it actually goes north of Portage as well. I wonder if I actually have my shed map with me. But this is the rate that we're applying to NCA 161 for all properties.
So
This
whether
is-
the shed or otherwise?
I'm not sure what your question is.
Well, the
Mr.
shed
Chair.
is a development zone downtown.
Yes, and that's
You're familiar
part
with
of
that?
this NCA.
Yeah, but there's boundaries, it is not throughout all of downtown. So the subject property, if there weren't, the 117 was used where typically you would use 103.50.
No,
Your model.
We
Well,
do
every other,
not.
we've got a dozen here and they're all at 103.50.
those are in the exchange. As I stated, in this NCA, for this cycle, this area, and you'll note that the comparables for each of these are very different.
Mhm.
The comparables that we use, these are all properties that are in NCA 161. Some of these comparables would fall under what Centerpoint has labeled as the shed, and some of them fall outside of that area. But these are the rates that are being earned. We have 101, 255, 165, 208,
You don't
142,
have to go through.
113.
Okay.
And we have $117 a stall because the information that's being reported to us by these owners who
Is
have
incorrect.
properties
Yeah.
in close proximity are saying that they are making that.
Okay. Those are all my questions, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Panel members, Mr. Laurendeau, questions?
I guess I'm gonna fall back. When did we start doing market versus market income? Your market value? When did you change that? We weren't doing that last year, were we?
This is a fresh look, and we have fresh evidence that we're looking at, and the way I bring in my evidence for market value based on what we're looking at I just get guided by the evidence that's in front of me, and the evidence that's in front of me for these properties specifically, because of what has been happening in this area of the downtown, this is very, very appropriate to do. And all I'm doing is bringing in additional market information to defend what market value is.
Okay,
Mr. Diamond?
So using the market sales comparison firstly, and what is that? Because you're attributing that's the highest and best use of the property?
Pardon me?
You're using a direct market approach primarily, and it was close to your market valuation using the income approach. Is that on the basis of you're using the highest and best use?
Our model typically defaults to whatever the highest value is, whether it's the land or the income. In this situation, it defaulted to the land, and the income was very close. In some situations, for these properties in particular, this is the first property I've had with this particular agent, but since we've started looking at these properties under appeal and the evidence that we've been looking at, we've been noticing that these properties are performing at a very different rate than other areas of the downtown. So we've actually been consistently requesting increases on some of these properties where our model was not actually corrected to the 117. So some of the properties were at a lower rate, and we have been requesting increases on some of the properties. And you'll notice there's one on the docket today that there is a difference in rate, but typically it defaults to the higher of the two values. In this case, the higher value it defaulted to is the land. I would review and think about, okay, does our land approach, is it consistent? We have some properties on the docket today where it did default to land, and based on the review that I made, it wasn't appropriate because of the limitations of the subject site. There are a number of factors that come into play. Because this property is a rectangular parcel, it's 12,000 square feet, it's relatively big. It is in a location that properties are being purchased for redevelopment. So in this case, I felt that the land approach was appropriate, and I brought in the income as a secondary approach.
Thank you.
The sales on page 5, you have 2, 4, 5 at the top, and then you have some more at the bottom.
Yes.
What are they about at the bottom? Did I miss something maybe?
I brought in 2 sets of sales because we actually have another property next on the docket that is of a smaller size in the same location as this. So I have in both briefs our large size sales and our small size sales, just to give the panel an idea of what properties are selling for, regardless of the size. So I wanted to bring in both of those so that we're getting a full picture of stuff that is happening in the downtown.
Did you bring a sale to show a cap rate? You were saying they're hard to find, and et cetera. Did you bring any at all?
No, the cap rate information we have in our brief is what we typically provide in our brief, plus my verbal presentation.
What was the cap rate that you used on the last reassessment? Do you know?
It was 5% for this area of the downtown.
Okay.
But we are taking a fresh look at the information based on the information that we have
I
in front
understand
of us.
everyone's new. That's all my questions. Mr. Story, if you'd like to take us through your information,
Yes,
please.
I'll be very brief. The assessors indicated that 5% was used last year, and we concur that we did a number of these, all of the ones that are on today's docket, and the model was 5% last year. We don't see any justification for any compression in cap rate. As a matter of fact, quite the opposite. The Bank of Canada rates have gone up, and typically that would result in a higher cap rate as well for investors. So our position is to go to page 6 of the assessor's brief. We're just asking for a 5% cap rate. We question the lack of evidence on the justification for the 117 in the model, but that's the way the city operates on parking lots. But we're not going to sit and argue for $100,000. So I'm asking at 5% that the market value be $1,010,000. Got 5%. 1,000,000.
1,118.
1,108,000, correct. And I also would suggest to the board that, just a reminder that the onus is on the assessor here, not the taxpayer. It's very difficult. There are no sales of surface parking lots because people don't buy surface parking lots to own a surface parking lot. Surface parking lots are inventorying opportunities. When opportunities come along, people develop the property. Going back to 1999, I wrote a business plan called Center Venture. 30% of the downtown was, of the mandated area was surface parking lots. And that was our focus, get rid of surface parking lots. Let's develop them. They're not safe, they're unsightly. And here we are in 2019, and we've still got too many surface parking lots. Is there risk with the surface parking lot? Absolutely. The day one of those owners who goes downtown and sees empty space decides to tear down his building, there's a new competitor. That's another surface parking lot, until an opportunity comes along. So if you don't have, all I can tell you is I'm in the marketplace, I'm dealing with people every day. I've done this for 31 years. I've never heard of anybody saying, I want to buy that surface parking lot over there because it's going to generate 4 or 5%. Nobody would take that risk. There's also an inflationary situation that you have to take into consideration. So there are no sales. The onus is on the assessor to prove to this board that there's cap rate compression in a market that there isn't, in my opinion. So my opinion is as good as yours. You're of the opinion that the cap rate is compressing, and I'm of the opinion that there's an evidence to support that. And I would ask that the cap rate be 5% as it was the previous year. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions of what Mr. Story has presented? Questions?
So Mr. Story, you'll agree that you've provided no market information within your brief?
I will agree.
That's my question, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Mr. Diamond, questions?
So, Mr. Story, you look at a surface parking lot, I don't see a lot of risk there because there's no building that you've got to fix up. It's basically a very, very easy operation. You get somebody that can park to manage it for you. And there's a chance that someday it might be redeveloped, you're gonna really cash in big time.
Yes, you may get
You know,
inflation in the
So,
property.
so why wouldn't a buyer saying, I can only get basically nothing on GICs right now, bonds are paying nothing,
Yeah.
a 4.5% cap rate might be pretty good to them because it's coming in, every month, there's no risk. Basically, there's a chance that, well, they're getting paid while they wait for their ship to come in when they sell it. And
Well, let's do.
it seems to be at a 4.5% cap rate that looks pretty good to an investor.
Can I share a story? It's on
Yeah.
today's docket. There's a property across the street. It's at 10 parking stalls. This guy has to be up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go and shovel the parking stalls because his tenants are coming. He has no access or egress. Is there capital appreciation? It's an irregular shaped property on Disraeli. Is there risk? Yeah, the risk is, it's a business, and somebody's got to maintain the business. He's not big enough to hire a management company.
Yeah, but we're talking about this lot here though, which is a
Well,
very
it's the
thing.
same with any, Mr. Diamond, it's an opportunity. You get the benefit, which Ms. Worm hasn't talked about but should, is that in addition to the income return, you get a potential appreciation in real property if it goes up in value. So, but you can do that with the stock market as well.
Yeah.
But if you're getting 1 3/4% in your savings in a bank, and you could find a passive income source that is a surface parking lot, you may very well be better off to buy a surface parking lot. And maybe we'll find somebody someday that buys a surface parking lot for the sake of owning a surface parking lot. That's not what we want, that's just on hold. And a couple of years ago, the city had some sales. And Ms. Worm used those sales to establish a cap rate. And what they were doing is taking NOI from parking lots against purchase prices of development opportunities. The big one, of course, was Big Sky, then Stevenson. And it doesn't work for that. You can't look at that. You can't even look at other buildings and say surface parking lots are going to appreciate. Even our mayor last year said
Okay,
that.
I'm satisfied with your answer.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Lorndell, question?
No, I'm good.
Question? So you're suggesting a 5% cap rate?
5%. I
as
see
opposed
no
to the assessor's.
justification for a reduction in cap rate. There are no sales, the assessor hasn't. She has a feeling by giving you a bunch of cap rates
Okay.
on other things that it reflects and it doesn't.
That's all my questions.
Thank you, sir.
Summation? I think that, yes, would you like a chance for summation?
I think we were gonna do another property that I think we've covered it, we'll probably
Let's
cover
do
it some
one,
more.
can we do one at the end, just one summation at the end? Does that
Yeah.
work for everyone?
Sure,
Very good.
maybe after
Okay.
each different area, I'm not sure.
Whatever you want.
I think, Mr. Story, you gave us some of your summation already.
Very much.
We will go to 0 Ford Street. Item number 2.
We're looking at file number 19 dash.
Warren, hang on. I gotta find it, I got so many files. Is there a foot? Oh, I got it, okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
We're looking at file number 19-4692, roll number 12093112000. I'm recommending to maintain the 2020 assessed value of $579,000. This is a service parking lot located on the west side of 4th Street between Portage Avenue and Graham Avenue. If you look at the aerial photo, you'll see the subject property as previously described. On page 3, you'll see subject property photos. On page 4, you'll see income and expense information. In this situation, this property had defaulted to the land value. Based on looking at the income approach to value, the value was $624,000 versus the $579,000. Because this was a slight increase, and typically we request increases that are above the 10% range, I have presented both both approaches to value, although the income approach would be higher than the land approach. If you look at this property, this is 6,000 square feet. If you look at these sales that I've shown on my page 5, there has been some commentary that no parking lots have sold and they're sold for redevelopment. On the top chart of the 5 sales that are listed, the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th, and the 5th are all parking lots, and still parking lots. They were purchased in between 2012 and 2015, and they are still operating as parking lots by parking management companies. The subject is on the far left-hand side of that column. If you look at the bottom, the comparables that have been shown here, we have 4 comparables here. At 505 St. Mary, which is outside of the downtown, it's on the other side of Balmoral. It's a larger property and it's significantly less, to show that once you get very close to outside of that core area, that properties are selling for significantly less. This is an area that is up for redevelopment. Comparable number 4 at 44 Hargrave Street is located on the south side of Broadway. Very similar square footage as the subject site. If you look, my comparable number 1 is 286 Gary Street. If you look on page 2 of my brief, and if you look over here, this is 286 Gary Street. It has a tent on it. It is a parking lot, but it has a tent on it because these aerial photos were taken when there was stuff going on with the whiteout party, because they put up a tent there.
Where's the tent? Where's the tent? Why are we talking about tents?
It was just temporary.
Right here.
Oh.
So it was there temporarily for events that they have. So just to assure you, there's not a building on it. It is a tent for an event. It is a parking lot. So again, that's comparable number 1 at 286 Gary Street, and that is a parking lot and still is a parking lot. If you look at page 6 of my brief, the income would be $117 a stall with 4.5% cap rate for a value of $624,000. Again, the commentary that the monthly net unit rent of $117 is inappropriate and there's nothing to support it, I will take you through all of my comparables. Comparable number 1 at 172 Vaughan Street. They are charging $145 a stall and making $101.23. That is a property, operated, or 172 Donald, my apologies, that's on the corner of St. Mary Avenue and Donald Street. It's operated by Impark, and they have a limited number of plugs, and there's a wait list for monthly parking. Comparable number 2 on Vaughan Street. They are making $255.22 a stall. This is located on the east side of Vaughan Street between Graham Avenue and St. Mary. It's across the street from the bay. It is also operated by Impark, and they don't have any monthly parking, they only have casual parking. Comparable number 3 is 0 Edmonton Street. They're located on the southwest corner of St. Mary Avenue and Edmonton Street. They are charging $190 a stall, and they are making $165.41 a stall. They also are operated by Impark, and there is a wait list for monthly parking. Comparable number 4 at 264 Smith Street. they're making $208.99 a stall. The reason this one is significantly higher than the 117 is because it is directly across the street from the MTS Center. It's beside that church that's on the Smith Street there, which is significantly higher and in a better location than the subject property, which is why our model at $117 a stall is there. If you look at 252 Fort Street, that's located on the north side of Graham Avenue between between Gary Street and Fort Street. It's operated by Indigo. It's a gravel lot with no plugs, and they're charging $185 a stall, and they're netting $142.93. Again, this is on the corner of Fort and Gary, about 2 buildings away from the subject site. Kennedy Street, comparable number 6. They're making $113.15 a stall. This is located on the northwest corner of St. Mary Avenue and Kennedy Street. Comparable number 7 at 208 4th Street. Again, very close proximity to the subject property, further south than the subject property. The
I
subject
just
property.
interrupted, it's hurting my ears. Can we, where are you cap rate? I accept your market rent.
I'm going through, and I feel I had to go through because there was a comment made in the last one that 117 was not appropriate.
Okay, let's
So
continue on.
I'm
You'll
going
just-
through our
yeah.
comparables
All right.
because there has been commentary. And if there is commentary, even though they're accepting it, they shouldn't be making the negative comments or the criticisms that I now have to go
Just
through.
continue on with it, yes.
Alright, so comparables number 8 through 14, again, we are within range. The 117, as I stated, is the high end of our model. But this location in the downtown is the area that is charging the most for parking, is the area that is making the most for parking. These are the most superior parking lots with income producing potential, which is why they are garnering the $117 a stall from our model. Again, the 4.5% cap rate. There are parking lot sales. We have looked at parking lot sales. Again, we have looked at them with a cautious eye. We are not inappropriately taking development properties and applying the parking lot income to it and coming up with a low cap rate inappropriately. We have looked at that. We know what cap rates those are coming in at, but those are coming in at the 1% and 2%, which we have not applied. Because it is inappropriate to be taking a net operating income from a parking lot and applying it against a development of a parking lot. It could be purchased for development in the future. Some have been immediately developed, but we have produced actual direct sales of properties that still are operating as parking lots. And again, we don't feel that it's appropriate to have a cap rate that is the same or higher than an improved property such as a multi-family building or an office building. So we're happy with the 4.5% and we're confident in it. On page 10, you'll see the income and expense mailer that's submitted by the subject property owner. On page 14, you'll see the details. This is operated by FNP, showing what they charge for casual parking. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Story, questions?
You know who owns this surface parking lot?
The neighboring building.
And what's it called? Which building?
Well, it's at 284th Street.
The old Carlton Club?
I don't know what
Formerly
that
Carlton Club?
I don't know what that means.
Currently Yoga Public?
Yes.
And are you aware that Yoga Public, every member gets the first hour free, and there's over 400 members?
That's a business decision that the owner has made.
It
and we
also
don't
reflects on
recognize
your market
business
rent, you're
decision.
saying where the extraordinary rent is. Are you also aware that this is not in the shed district?
We don't classify properties based on the shed. We classify properties based on the information that's been given to us, Mr. Chairman, and not all the properties that I've shown in my information with respect to direct sales and with respect to income are in the shed. There are a number of properties with my direct sales, for example, 44 Hargrave is nowhere near the shed. It is on the south side of Broadway.
Understood.
286 Gary is also not
Can
in
we
the
keep
shed
going on?
boundaries.
Can we keep going?
Well,
Question?
I'm gonna answer the questions as they're asked to me,
Okay, so
Mr.
we
Chairman.
understand that they're not, you're dealing with the NCA, not the shed. So maybe Mr. Story won't have to ask again whether it's in the shed, because the
Yeah.
shed isn't a part of their valuation system.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions. Thanks.
Mr. Lorenzo, questions?
So why did this one default the other way?
Because this one actually defaulted, and this is one of the ones that I commented on, that the model, when we reviewed the properties for the 2020 reassessment, this one was missed on correcting our model because we were reassessing all of these properties in this area, similar to the fresh look that we've taken. The information that we had for 2018, we did not get a significant amount of information that we got this cycle from owners. We had a lot of non-responses in 2018 with respect to this area, so we didn't have a lot of information. We had people responding a lot, which is why we now have 14 comparables in this area. So we were able to actually really take a good look at this, so we did review, and when we looked at the 2020 reassessment, we actually moved NCAs. So we moved some NCAs from what was considered the outer downtown to the inner downtown. So we did make a lot of changes to the parking model based on the information that was given to us, and this was just something that was missed when reclassifying the properties.
So the income value was higher than the market value.
I could have filled out the paperwork for an increase, but because it was less than 10%, I didn't do so. So I'm requesting to confirm the 579.
Okay. That's what I was asking.
Thank you. Mr. Diamond?
I have no further questions.
One question, I believe. On page 6, the monthly rental information, is this from mailers that you've received?
Yes, absolutely. These are directly from mailers that are given to us by property owners.
That's all my questions. Mr. Story, if you would like to take us through your information?
Yes, again, same argument. I'll ask the board just carry forward the 5% argument on the ballpark lots as well. They're essentially the same thing. And we're asking that the cap rate be maintained at 5%, similar to as the previous year. This particular property doesn't enjoy the after-hour casual parking rate. It's housed between the Vendome Hotel and the Garrett, and that doesn't lend itself to a place that people generally park at night. It's ancillary to the building. The Carl Club was not successful for many years, sat vacant for 15 years. Main reason was they felt there wasn't sufficient parking. The owner, Mr. Bell, went and bought the building to remove from it, tear it down, did a land swap, ended up with a 6,000 square foot parking lot. So he would have, his building would have a chance to operate. It operates as Yoga Public. They charge 1 hour each. They charge themselves one hour for each member that checks in, and that's the only way Yoga Public would operate, is if it had parking. It has to be proximity parking for the same reasons. At one time, we had the Peninsula Restaurant, we had the Vendome, and we had the Garrett, and they didn't lend themselves to going for an evening walk. So the 5%, I don't see any justification for any compression in cap rate, and I'm asking a 5% rate. I'm just, if we use the 5% using the 117 model rent, which I don't agree with, but we don't have evidence to the contrary. The assessor doesn't have any evidence of the positive other than to tell you that this is what they told her in the questionnaires. But in any case, if I follow her page 6 and can change my her 4.5 to 5, it's 561.6, and I ask that be the assessment for this one. Thank you.
Could you repeat that? Did you change your value?
I'm looking
Mr.
at,
Story?
no, I'm looking at your page 6.
Yeah, he's changed his value.
And what is that, just so I can make a note?
Oh, I
please?
adjusted your 4.5 to 5.
This is your NOI with 5% cap.
Yeah, no,
I just
to 5.
didn't hear him actually say the number, but I'll go and calculate it.
561.6.
Thank you, that was my question.
Okay, that's all the questions. Mr. Diamond, questions?
I have no questions.
Mr. Lorenzo?
No questions.
I have no questions either.
I don't want to get to that.
Thank you.
Can we just take 2 minutes, Mr. Chair?
Yes, we'll take a short break. We'll call the meeting back to order, and we will continue item number 3, 0 Disraeli Freeway.
All right, we're looking at file number 19-4824, roll number 13-080-967-100. I'm recommending to maintain a 2020 assessed value of $109,000. This is a surface parking lot located on the north side of Disraeli, just south of Main Street and west of Martha. If you look on my page 2, you'll see an aerial photo of the subject property. On page 3, you'll see subject property photos. On page 5, you'll see the income valuation summary for the subject property. This is in what is considered our outer downtown parking area. We have 10 stalls with a monthly net unit rent of $45.50 a stall and a 5% cap rate for a value of $109,000. Again, as stated, this is our outer downtown parking area. And our modeled rates for this outer downtown parking area range from $45.50 upwards of $84.50. So this is at the bottom of the range for this parking area because of what this parking lot is and its configuration and location, which is why it's receiving one of the lowest rates that this model has because of its inferior quality. Again, the cap rate for this area is 5%, not 4.5, because that is our inner downtown parking cap rate. So the cap rate for this area in the outer downtown is 5% this cycle and was 5% last cycle. On the bottom of my page 5, you'll see income comparables. These are comparables that are located in our outer downtown parking model. Number 8 and number 9 are actually located in our suburban parking model. The properties that are in closest proximity are the top 3. Comparable number 2 and comparable number 3 are both very small like the subject. They are gravel lots and they're significantly offset from Main Street down Galt, and they're making $66.49, $58.33, and $62.11. So these are the 3 comparables that are in this area of the outer downtown and are in very, very close proximity. They are charging $80 a stall, which is slightly below market, but for the type of property that it is and the fact that it's gravel and its location, $80 is around appropriate for that area. If you turn to page 8, you'll see the mailer that was submitted by the subject property owner. They have 10 stalls here. They charge $60 a stall. They're charging below market, which is why they're not making as much money as they probably could be. We have an annual net rent of $5,460, and they're reporting a net operating income of $4,818.89. It's just shy of what we're assessing them for, but again, if they would charge a little bit closer to the $80-90 range versus the $60, they could be making a little bit more money because you really can't find parking for $60 a stall in this area other than this parking lot. On pages 13, you'll see some in-park details of other properties that are in close proximity to the subject, just showing what typical rates are. $120 on page 15, in close proximity to the subject, $170 a month. At 55 Duncan, at $125. 115 just on the other side of Main Street from the subject. That's typically what a parking management company is charging. I'm not suggesting that this owner can garner $125 a stall, but I am suggesting that $60 a stall is low, and I do feel if they had been charging about $80, similar to the subject, the comparables shown on Galt, which are very, very similar to the subject. They have no plugs, it's gravel. The owner could be making slightly more, and I feel that our model is assessing them appropriately. It's my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. We'll see if Mr. Story has any questions.
Yes, just very quickly. The parking lot you're aware is right behind where we're sitting now. It's across the street by Disraeli, but it's on the by Austin Street.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that is where I described the property, so I am aware.
And so if you look at page 2, you did mention it. It's an irregular shape, and you'll see on page 2 of your brief photograph, and it is an irregular shape. And how do they, any idea how they determine where Is it sort of first come, first served, you create your parking spot? How does that work? Do you
I'm
know?
not actually sure.
Do they have lines?
I don't think so, no.
Okay. And we've gone through, we did this, I think last cycle as well, we talked about this, and the basic difference we have is you think that they don't charge enough, correct?
I have evidence that I've reviewed that I know they don't charge enough.
But have you seen anybody that's getting any more money in that specific area, in that Ruffin area?
As per my presentation, Mr. Chairman, comparables number 1 through 3 on my brief on Galt, very similar sizes, gravel lots, this one is paved. Comparables number 2 and comparables number 3, very close proximity to the subject, just down Galt, it's within walking distance of the subject, and they're charging $80 a stall.
Doesn't, excuse me, but doesn't Galt run off of waterfront? It's quite a
Galt-
different location than this, I think.
Here is the subject property on Disraeli, here is Galt. The parking lots
Which
on
page
Galt
you
that
on?
I'm referring to are right here, sort of off the picture. They're very, very close.
Which page are you on?
2.
Page 2? Okay, that's fine, thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the panel, Mr. Diamond,
No, I don't have any.
Mr. Lorendo?
No.
I have no questions either.
I didn't have a calculation when we did this, but I've done it now, if I can pass this, there's no new information, but just a calculation. I didn't, there's nothing to do.
Okay. If you would like to take us through your information, Mr.
Yeah.
Mr.
Story?
Chairman, are we allowing Mr. Story to hand out information that was not exchanged?
He
It's
said,
from
he
the
said
brief,
there's
it's a
no,
calculation, well, look at it first before you object.
he's changed the calculation
He
apparently.
doesn't have a
There's the
calculation.
We didn't include a
He just
calculation.
has a 2-page brief with no
Yeah,
workup.
we didn't have that, there was no information, we didn't have it at the time.
Maybe-
Well, I mean, I can go through, it's in the brief, I can do it, it's straight from the questionnaire. I'll just do it out of the brief if you prefer.
Okay, that could qualify as new evidence then, I guess.
Well, it's not new evidence.
But he can do it verbally if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. I have no
Yeah.
arguments with him going through and presenting any information he wants. There is an exchange which I met, and
But you're suggesting you're objecting to it without seeing it, that doesn't make sense.
it's a workup that I did not get in our exchange. The information that was exchanged is in front of me. If you wanna go through a workup
Thank you very
and
much.
reference it, I'm happy to.
I think it's vitally important that the board realizes where this particular surface parking is located. Again, not a lot of downtown traffic, there isn't anybody parking in this pie-shaped lot to be able to go to the MPS center, they'd be walking through the core of downtown to get there, it just doesn't happen. There's no, I doubt that anybody parks in the evening, but I don't know that for a fact. So what we've done is the gentleman maintains the lot himself, it's, he gets the $60 a month, he continues to keep it full because he gets $60 a month, that's what the market is, in his opinion. Ms. Warren thinks he's under market, I don't know how she comes to that conclusion, but I wouldn't pay anything to park there, it would scare me, to be honest. So I'm suggesting that the parking is 10 stalls at $60 is $7,200. I'm using a 40% expense ratio on the 7,200 because there are taxes. He does have some snow cleaning, but he does a lot of the stuff himself. He has maintenance, but I think that if you were to look at page 3 of Ms. Worm's brief, the photographs could use a little more maintenance, I suspect. So using a 40% ratio would mean that we would have an NOI of $4,300. I'm suggesting a 6% cap rate because there's no investment, no redevelopment opportunities. On these 5% cap rates that we've all lived with the last number of years, there's an assumption there that worst case scenario, someone will come along someday with a development opportunity. But it's highly unlikely that anybody is going to develop 10,000 square feet in this particular part of town, in this location. So I'm asking for $72,000 as an assessment using a 6% cap rate. And I have nothing other than if the base is 5, this would at least be 6% because of the inherent risk of location. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Ms. Warren?
You indicated that $60 is market. Have you done a market analysis of gross rates, Mr. Story?
No, but I did talk to the gentleman, and he talked glowingly about his customers because it turns out that some are gone. At some point every year, there's somebody away and the spots are available, so we don't have a problem how to get parked. But he seems quite happy to keep it full, and $60 is what keeps it full.
So he keeps it full?
Seems to be.
And how long has he been charging $60?
I don't know.
Has he increased his rates at all in any point
I
in time?
doubt it, because I think he's happy that he has tenants that park there.
Based on your analysis, have parking rates been increasing over the past number of years?
I don't share your enthusiasm for parking lots, so I don't analyze parking rates, to be honest.
Okay, those are my questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Lorendo, questions? Mr. Diamond, questions?
So I've sort of noticed when the city raised the parking meter rates, the lots seem to go up at the same time.
Could be, yeah.
Yeah, so,
I don't know this one anyway, but this is, we did do, Ms. Norm asked, and I could have expanded upon it, I didn't. We did a couple of years ago ask him where his customers came from, and they came primarily from City Hall and actually.
these are all monthly parkers, they're not casual. These are all monthly
Yes,
parkers.
monthly parkers, yeah. And they're people.
Okay, that's
who work
fine.
in this area.
That's my question, thank you.
Yeah. So there's no casual parking for, because
Okay.
we've got the moose here, the jets here, because the bombers.
I think you'd stated that earlier,
Thank you.
yes. I have no questions.
Okay.
Summations were leave till the end, you had said earlier, so we'll move
Yeah.
on to,
I'd like to do different summations for like our different areas if
okay,
possible.
anytime you like. If you'd like to give us some summation now, go right ahead.
You know what, it's fine. Board of Ed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Story?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Okay. That will complete Zero Disraeli Freeway. And we will move on to item number 4, 246 Beverly Street.
Now, Mr. Chairman, would we, after this one, be able to do 235 Simcoe next, just because they're essentially the same?
It's
Yes.
one parking lot.
But we'll do them separately,
Yes.
but, yes, the next one will be the 235 Simcoe, item number 8, I believe it is. Okay, give us a minute here to organize. Okay, whenever you're ready, Ms. Moorhead.
So we're looking at 246 Beverly Street, file number 19-4044, roll number 13-032-236-500. I'm recommending that the burden of proof be placed on the applicant for non-cooperation as per section 53(3)(b of the Municipal Assessment Act, and if a reduction in assessment is ordered, that it follows section 54(3.2) of the Municipal Assessment Act. If you look on page 10 of my brief, you'll see the request for income and expense information that was sent on April 12th, indicating that a separate questionnaire is required for each roll number, and submitting one mailer covering multiple roll numbers is no longer acceptable. That wording has been in our letter with instructions since 2013. This is not a case where the ownership has changed. If you look at page 1, the owner is National Developments Limited, and the letter went on page 10 to National Developments Limited. On page 12, you'll see the income and expense mailer. It says see attached. Again, no parking information has been reported. On page 14, you'll see the workup for this, or the mailer that was submitted. We have a parking revenue. If you go down, we don't know what utilities are attributed to the lots. There are plugs in these lots, so we don't know what hydro is attributed, what amounts are attributed in that sense. We have some parking lots, we have parking lot utilities are the only ones mentioned, and parking lot repairs. We have two amounts listed as expenses. We have property taxes for the building. We have outside maintenance, snow removal, refuse, window cleaning. We're not sure what these expenses, where they go. There's parking on the subject site, there's parking on the other parking lot at 235 Simcoe, which is the next parking lot on the docket. So if you look at the aerial photo, these are the three properties that they've reported together. This building here, which has a significant amount of parking, there's two parking lots here. So we don't actually know what is attributed to each. We cannot break it out. We don't know what sort of income is being produced on this. And we have requested that they submit mailers for that very reason, because we don't know what's happening. We can't break out the income from this, from the building. We can't break out the expenses from the building and the other lots. So we have to request that non-cooperation be applied in this particular situation.
Okay. Mr. Story, do you have anything to say about the non-cooperation?
Yes, so the information was sent back. You did receive the information, including a rent roll that has the individual parking on it. Did you do a follow-up letter to ask why?
We're not
Did you-
required to do that.
Well, wouldn't that be just as easy to come and have to make a presentation here?
We
with
send
these?
out thousands of these mailers, and they do not get reviewed until significantly after when we need to use them. We are not required by the legislation. There are stated legal cases where we are not required to be following up with people. If they haven't sent something to us, we send a courtesy registered mail letter to let people know. But we have sent out the instructions. They're very clear. It's bolded, it's underlined. They know what's expected, and they have chosen not to do so.
Have they ever been non-compliant in the past?
I'm not sure, I can't speak to that.
Okay. This is a fairly active family in our real estate market in Winnipeg, the Kivas family. Do you know that have you had any experience with them ever being non-compliant with anything?
That is besides the point. The information in front of us here today is the information, and that is why we've made the request.
And you're aware that these parking lots are not surface parking lots, they're part of the lease on the Child and Family Service building at 829 Portage. Are you aware of that?
I'm aware that they're affiliated with the building, correct?
And they're ancillary to the building. The building uses all of the parking. Are you aware of that?
This is the same situation that happens in, again, hundreds of properties, and we
Okay.
request that individuals submit individual roll
And
numbers.
so that someone at the department made a decision not to take the time, because you're too busy or whatever, to pick up the phone and say.
Mr. Chairman, I object to those comments.
What would you
Okay,
pick?
they are not required to follow up, and so,
Well, I think they are, but, okay. So no registered letter was sent.
But that was stated, correct.
Thank you. That's all my questions.
okay. Board, have any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Mr. Lorenzo?
Ron, still here?
Are you making a presentation, or
Are you waiting?
We will,
Well, it's the same situation, we've had this, if you like, I will. These parking lots are part of a lease of 125 stalls to 839 Portage Avenue, which is Child and Family Services. They have the whole building and they have all the parking. They're not two different parking lots, they're one parking lot, but there's a back lane that runs down between Beverly and Simcoe. So they're on two rolls, but they're one parking lot. These people have owned this building for many, many years. They've never been non-compliant with anything I'm aware of. Very serious. There's no follow-up. Typically, we see a letter signed by the owner that he's received it. We have no indication. The offices of national development, I don't know if they even know the office.
Well, it's not a matter of them not receiving it, they sent information in,
Yes.
but the matter is whether it's,
Well, we don't know, we
Acceptable or
assume
not.
this, we don't know that they didn't receive it. It appears that they received because it went out.
well, they sent the information in, so one would assume they,
Oh, yes.
they received the,
Yeah,
it's not a matter of
Okay.
them not receiving it, it's a matter of whether it's,
yeah,
Satisfactory.
yeah.
yeah. So there's been no history of non-compliance, and I think the city has an obligation to at least pick up the telephone and say, we're trying to get this information as quickly as we can, and I think they would have complied, but we are where we are, so we're here today for you. We'll leave that decision up to you folks.
Thank you. If you will recess briefly. Okay, I call the meeting back to order, and the panel has decided that we will allow the city's request for deferral, and therefore, Mr. Story, we would ask that you make your presentation first.
Yes, thank you.
Perhaps you could read the address, roll number into the record.
Yes, the address is 235 Simcoe Street, I presume that's the
I
following.
think we're doing the Beverly Street right now,
Beverly.
246 Beverly.
246 Beverly. Pardon me. Sorry, Mr. Roll number 13032236500. Address 246 Beverly Street.
Thank you.
File number 194044.
That's good.
Assessment suggested 572. Are you ready for me?
Yes,
Thank you.
please.
I won't submit anything this time, I'm available for any questions. I'll wait till this Warren presents and I'll ask her a couple
Do you
questions.
have, do you have a value that you're requesting?
Yes.
What is that value?
Our values on Beverly Street is 542,182.
The information you gave us,
I
Pardon me?
have
I have
373.
372 on yours.
Yes, because we used a higher cap rate, we reduced it to 5.5.
Oh, you reduced it.
the
Oh.
cap rate to 5.5.
You
Okay,
didn't say
We use
that.
we use the building cap rate as a host cap rate because the parking is is leased to the building. But we
What was your new number?
I knew, can I give it out, Lindsay, can I show it to you first? That's just a calculation, I would save $35 as a market rent and 5.5,
all he's done is put 5.5%.
which is
on
your
this.
number, which is your cap rate in the briefing,
Okay.
yeah.
So your value is 542.
Can you pass that, Michelle? Yeah, thanks. And the only thing I'd like to bring to the board's attention is
Did Michelle get a copy of this?
Yes, I have.
Did you get a copy?
Yes, he gave me one.
You just got extra.
I only
Sorry.
get mine.
Hmm?
Mine myself.
You gave us yours, Sid.
Yeah. Thank you.
You would like to draw our attention to something?
Yeah, two things. Just to be familiar with the property, if you flip this last document, two photos, they come out of the brief, and it's a little confusing because they scatter park, and this red car is in both the briefs that the assessor presented. So I just wanted to show that there's two parking lots. They essentially operate the same way. They're separated by the back lane. And the assessor, we're using $35 a stall as a monthly rent. And the assessor, you can see on her page,
Mr. Chairman, I haven't made my presentation yet.
Yes, you don't have to point out what she's
Okay.
using, just tell us what you're
Okay.
using and why.
we're using $35 a square foot. We think it's supported by the assessor.
$35 a stall.
I'm sorry, $35 a stall. We're using 35, and the city is using something similar. And that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see if we have questions from the assessor.
I have no questions.
No questions
Mr.
from
Chairman.
the panel members, Mr. Diamond?
Mr. Story, I don't see any comparative rental of stalls that give you your $35. What are you using at that?
Well, we use the rate, we use a rate of somewhere in the $50 to $60 range on the shoulder of downtown, we call it. So I think we've used, I believe that we've assumed that we're in the 50 plus range, and we take out operating costs, about 40%. So just an estimate.
Okay, so there's no addresses or parking lots that you know rent out at certain amounts or anything?
Yeah, what
So
happens
just
is that-
basically just took a figure from the back of a napkin or something and gave it to us?
No, I think, no, what it amounts to is the city's numbers, the model numbers at 103.50 are not unreasonable for downtown, but as you move out, I know I've done some surface parking lots on Eldon right over here, and there's a little different rate. And by the health sciences, there's a little different rate. And I think that, first of all, this isn't a surface parking lot, it's parking for child and family services. So nobody's being asked to put money in a meter or anything of that nature. So it really doesn't function as a surface parking lot in any case.
Thank
So I've
you.
used what I think is a reasonable rate.
Now I do have a question.
Go ahead.
So in a case such as this, would they not be further ahead to be doing a market evaluation on the property and not
Well,
parking?
what
lot?
we'd be, in my opinion, Mr. Lorendo, what we'd be better off to do is to look at these properties that the lease is so important to the the parking is so important to getting that lease, to get the building leased out, that we should be using it, and we do in some cases. At CDI downtown, we do a reduction of we deduct it off of the land value off of the cost of the host property, which is the Child and Family Services building. The same owners own the Viscount Gord, and their parking is across the street. And it's deducted off of the capitalized value of the property annually. So I think these have to be looked at a little differently. But it should be on the income approach if there was an income, but it's hypothetical because it's not a surface parking lot. It's a parking lot for a particular building. It's on these different rolls because it's intersected by the back lane. I don't know if that answers your question, I don't think so.
What this,
By the market, you
being
mean
a
it should
child
be
and
an
family
income-
services, is that taxed under G or is that tax exempt part of it?
I don't know. I don't believe it's tax exempt. The building itself you're talking about, not the parking. Parking's not exempt. Might be, maybe we should look at that, I don't know.
I've got no further questions.
Thank you. And I have no questions, so perhaps Ms. Wareham, you could take us through your information.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, just give me a moment. Okay, so again, we're looking at 246 Beverly Street. I'm recommending to maintain the 2020 assessed value of $572,000. As stated, this is a surface parking lot. It is located on the west side of Beverly Street, just north of Portage, near Portage and Broadway. You'll see subject property photos, aerial photos on page 2, subject property photos on page 3. Now, as this was sort of already alluded to, this is significantly outside of the downtown. We do have a suburban parking income model, but typically, 9 times out of 10, suburban parking is required, it's ancillary for buildings, and the information we get on suburban income parking really isn't there because they're not operated for the income producing potential. This is a situation where our model defaulted to the land value, and this is a situation where, when we look at parking in the suburban area, we typically, 9 times out of 10, are looking at land value for the properties, because that's what these properties would trade, that's the value of the property, because they would be purchased with a building. So on my page 5, I have presented a number of land sale comparables in proximity to the subject property. The subject property has a land rate of $29.44. It's not actually on this chart, so please note that the rate for this property is $29.44 a square foot. My land sale comparables range from about $20.08 upwards of $73.74. Now, that being said, I have taken 572,000 and I have worked it backwards. So this is not our income model on page 6. I want to make that very clear. This is not our income model because I have mentioned the limitations with the income model. But the reason I have done this is to show, if you take the land value based on our cap rate parameters, what you would get as a monthly net unit rent per stall. And the reason I did that is because we do have some suburban parking comparables, and I wanted to show where that fared with the parking incomes that are reported, even though it is limited. So I just wanted to make that very, very clear. So the very first comparable is at 308 Maryland Street in close proximity to the subject, and they're making $84.78 a stall. We have 49 Austin, which is also in the suburban area. It's just north of us right now, and they're making $25.77. 225 Ronald Street is by the Courts of St. James. They're making $31.40. The closest comparable that is very, very similar to the subject is 285 Victor Street, which is the building at 755 Portage Avenue, and it has 2 parking lots as well as parking on the site, which is why we have 3 roll numbers there. 285 Victor, 755, and 741. That was a situation where it was a multiple roll submission, but they broke out the information where we were able to calculate that rate. So they're making $81.49. The remainder of the parking lots that I've put in are sort of outer downtown comparables that are sort of on the fringes of the outer downtown, bordering suburban parking and outer downtown, just to give an idea of the comparables that we do have. I do feel that the most appropriate weight, the most amount of weight needs to be placed on the land value, because this is typically how we assess parking lots that are in the suburban area. A lot of our parking lots are not actually called CMPSP of a parking lot, they're called vacant commercial. So we have assessed this in the same way that we always, or typically have for properties such as this. That's my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Story, any questions?
No, just the, on this particular property, looking at your page 6, the monthly unit rent is $36.92, correct?
As I tried to make very, very clear, I have used that as an example to show, if you take the land value of this property with the cap rate of 5.5% to see what a monthly net unit rent per stall would be, and then shown comparables for it. So I just want to make it clear that those are not our model numbers. That is worked from the land value, because that value is what I'm considering market value. I'm just
But
using that as
you're using an income approach to value, correct?
Nope.
No, okay. What do you call this approach on page 6? of your
This
brief?
is just supplementary information as a cross-check, because we like to have a cross-check of, if something's on the income, what is it on a per square foot rate? Does it make sense? Like, we're trying to hit market value here, so I'm trying to show there's a couple ways, and using the market information that we
Okay.
have.
I think we're just caught up in terminology here, but on your page 1 of your brief, the assessed value recommended is $572, correct?
Correct?
And on page 6 of your brief, the value is 572, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And I would read this, that this is on the income approach, using a
But
model.
the assessor has said that she's used this as a sort of going backwards check to see what it comes to, so it comes to 3692, so,
And that's by taking the land value, which
Yeah.
is from the city,
Right.
yeah,
and dividing it by the number of stalls, and saying
yeah,
that's what.
using a 5.5%.
Based on the
cap rate.
comparables on page 5.
Okay, thank you, I'm fine.
Okay, questions from the panel? What is the rate per square foot that you've used to get to this 572?
$29.44.
Where does that show?
It doesn't.
I-
Gave it to you verbally.
Oh, okay, I was,
So if you take 572, that's on the front page, and you divide by the square footage on the front page.
okay. Okay, I don't have any
Can I
more
have a
questions.
follow-up to your question, Mr. Chair?
Yes,
Ms. Worm, on page 5 of your brief, you did indicate that you verbalized that the value is 2944, but this list of land sale comparables averages 4722 a square foot. Can you just explain the difference?
Like between the average of
Well,
the
the average,
comparables?
what was the reason for giving us these? They average 4722 a square foot. But your number is
So
2944 is what you need to develop a,
are you saying
a
we're
backward model.
underassessing it, Mr. Story?
pardon?
I'm not sure what your question is.
Well, I'm looking at this, and when I added up, we added it up, and it's 4722 is the average of the sale price per square foot. Okay?
I brought in a range of comparables that are in close proximity to the subject that I thought were appropriate to show that there are some that are lower, there are some that are higher. If you're saying the average is $47 and then $29.44 seems very appropriate then in my mind.
Well, it's the number you used. Thank you.
okay. That concludes 246 Beverly.
Yeah.
Mr.
And-
Chairman, the arguments on 235 Simcoe are exactly identical, so I will try to go speedily
Okay,
through
we
them.
will move on to item number 8, 235 Simcoe.
We have file number 19-4049, roll number 13-032-225-500. The address is 235 Simcoe Street. I'm requesting that the burden of proof be placed on the applicant for non-cooperation as per section 53(3)B of the Municipal Assessment Act. And if a reduction in assessment is ordered, that it follows section 54(3.2) of the Municipal Assessment Act. My evidence is the exact same as the previous property. If you turn to page 10, you'll see the request letter that was sent indicating that separate questionnaires are not appropriate. It was sent to the owner, National Developments Limited. I've gone through the mailer. You're unable to break the information apart, and again, this is the exact same argument as the previous property. If you need further information, I'm happy to go into it again.
Thank you. Mr. Story, have you anything to
I just want the
present?
board to consider that no second mail was sent out. And just but carry forward my arguments from the previous file and from this one too. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from panel members? Okay, we will,
We don't, I think we have to.
We don't have to.
we don't,
I think you made a decision.
we don't have to leave. The board will allow the deferral. And we will ask Mr. Story that you carry on then
Yes.
your information.
Thank you so much. Again, you go to our rebuttal brief, there's 2 parking lots. The incomer suggesting is $35 a stall, capitalized at 5.25, or 5.5. 5.5 is the same rate used by the assessment department on this property. So the only area we differ is $35. If you go to page 6 of the assessor's brief, you'll see that the monthly net unit rent.
Again, Mr. Story, the assessor hasn't put her information
Okay.
into.
Okay, that's our position, thank you. We believe the assessment should be 542,182 on Beverly, 327,27 on Simcoe.
And what was the last one on Simcoe, please?
Simcoe is, it's right in the material you have. it's $320, $727. That's 42 parking stalls at $35. Cap rate 5.5, used similar to the assessor. The only difference we have is the assessor's a little bit higher on their monthly rent.
Love that.
Maybe more.
I don't, the only
He's
information.
referring to his
46
handout from the
times,
previous property, he put
Oh.
both
The handout,
revised
yeah.
values.
Oh, okay, I didn't realize that,
Yeah. So we're accepting the
handout.
5.5% and,
covered both of
so,
these.
they're both covered in one, it's one parking lot.
Okay, okay, that's your presentation. Thank you very much. See if the assessor has any questions of Mr. Story.
You'll agree, Mr. Story, you don't have any market information in your brief?
I would agree.
The burden of proof has been placed on you?
Today, yes, so far it has.
Okay, those are my questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Panel members, any questions? Mr. Lorendo?
Not yet. Not in the city.
Mr. Diamond?
No questions.
I have no questions either. Ms. Wareham, if you would like to take us through your
Thank you, Mr.
presentation,
Chairman.
please.
I'm recommending to maintain the 2020 assessed value of $430,000. This is a service parking lot, as previously stated, located on the east side of Central Street, just north of Portage, near Portage Avenue and Broadway. Similar to the previous property, this has defaulted to a land value approach. The land value is, and my apologies that it's not actually written on page 5, I again profusely apologize that I did not put it on there. It's $31.92 a square foot, $31.92 a square foot. My comparables are the same as the previous one, they range from $20.08 upwards of $73.74. Again, this is a smaller lot than the previous one we talked about, it's a very close rate. It's getting a different model rate slightly because of its size, and our model applies economies of scale to properties in, outside of the downtown, which is typical in the market. Typically, these lots, as stated, are valued on the land approach. Again, I'm going to make it very clear, we are relying on a land approach. We are considering this as vacant land for 13,485 square feet at $31.92 for a value of $430,000. Working backwards from that rate to look at what a monthly net unit rent would be at $46.92. Again, looking at the comparables in the area, specifically looking at comparable number 4, just down the street from the subject at $81.49. Again, income comparables for parking are very limited in these areas, which is why we've presented a number of comparables to show, if you look at the land, the income that's applied is not out to lunch and supportable by market information. That's my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Story, questions of the assessor?
Yes, just one. If you go to page 6 of your brief, you have a $10 a square foot differential between market monthly net unit rent, per stall rent, between this and the previous hearing we just did. It's $36.92 and this is $46.92. You're not suggesting that's economies of scale, are you?
Because we're not relying on a modeled income approach to value, which would give typical rates per stall, we're relying on the land. Now, because of the configuration of each of the lots and the number of stalls that are there, and the number of stalls that are able to be parked, that's why you get a differential in that per square, or in that per stall rate. Again, we are working backwards from a land value. We are relying on a vacant land value presented on page 5 with market land sales presented on page 5. This is supplementary information to show that we're not at like $100 a stall or something astronomical. We're just trying to show that when you work it backwards, it makes sense with comparables from the area.
You will agree that one parking lot has 2 different market rents, irrespective of what you want to call the approach. One is $36.92 and the other is $46.92. Do you agree with that?
No, they don't have two different market rents. They have two different rates per square foot of $29.44 and $31.92,
And
Mr. Chairman.
3192 is not in your brief anywhere.
It's a very simple calculation, and I can take you through it, Mr. Story.
The
It's
3192 is a simple.
$430,000 on page 1, divided by the square footage, 13,485, also found on page 1.
430,000 from page 1, but that's your
Divided.
assessed value. That's not sales, supported by sales. Are
Very
you using
confused by
assessed
the
value?
line of questioning, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, please explain to me why the $31 isn't in your brief and how you arrived at it. That's not-
You arrived at it from the sales on page 5, Mr. Story.
The $31.92 is our modeled land value per square foot, which I have defended with actual sales shown on page 5. Again, Mr. Story, I would like to reiterate the burden of proof is not placed on the city in this particular situation, and I've provided a significant amount of market information in my brief.
Thank you for your,
Thank you. Questions, Mr. Lorendo?
So you increased the value of the land from $29.44 to $31 because the lot was smaller?
That's how our model works. It's a difference of very minimal amount, and that's what our model is.
Well, it changed it to 396 instead of 430.
I'm not changing anything.
No, I said it would if you went to the 29.44.
When we look at our sales and we look at land sales, we do see that there's economies of scale that happen on sizes of properties. And when sizes of properties change and get larger or smaller, there is economies of scale. And because these properties are not the exact same size, our model has applied slightly different rates to
Are
it.
you showing me the economy of scale with the sales you've got here on your page 6?
Page 5.
Okay.
Page 5.
This
Page
five.
5.
I haven't been able to show any economies of scale. I've just shown a number of different land sales with different zonings, so there's a lot of characteristics that are involved with these ones, just because they have a bunch of different zonings. But what I was trying to show were a number of sales in the area. So the subject property is zone C2 community. If you get rid of all of the other sales, we only have 2 sales. They're at $22 and $20.
Yeah.
Because we're trying to expand what things sell for, typically commercial properties are on the higher end of land sales, which isn't really shown in this, based on the zoning. So typically in this area, properties are selling for different rates regardless of the zoning. So we're just trying to show what properties are selling for and provide a number of market information.
But your economy of scale, these are smaller lots at a less value. It sort of works against what you're telling me.
I think that it makes sense, and based on what I have looked at, economies of scale does exist, based on the information that's here.
But not
Yes.
according to the information you're providing us today.
No, it is a difference of $31.92 versus $29.44, and I guess we can agree to disagree, but again, I will reiterate.
But maybe that $29 is too high is what I'm saying. Because if I take those 2 C2s, which are smaller lots, at a smaller value,
That's
where do you come up with your 29?
That's absolutely appropriate, although I will reiterate the burden of proof is not on myself. Mr. Story has provided a brief with 0 market evidence in it, so that is our position.
But your number using your information would give me a lower number than Mr. Story's.
Based on your interpretation of my
You're
information.
right. And that's my interpretation on this side.
And that's absolutely appropriate, and I think that our value is good, and I think that the sales I have produced make sense, and I think that we're within a range. And as Mr. Story stated, the average is $44.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Diamond?
No questions?
I have no questions either. That will conclude 235 Simcoe. We go back up to item number 5, Mill Street. Question mark Mill Street.
May I just make a comment, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
These are all ballpark parking lots. And
Which ones are you referring to? Mill Street, Westbrook?
The whole remainder of
the
the
whole
docket.
remainder of the
Oh,
docket.
okay. So
And
go
these
ahead.
are, and we've had the same arguments going on 23 years on these particular, they're not developable, they were required by the lease. I'd like to do one argument, you can pick, Ms. Worm can pick anyone she wants, and do one argument, just carry it forward. Are you okay with that or no?
Well, we'll start with one. We will have to, for the record, go through each one, but we'll start with one and we'll listen to the arguments very
So,
closely.
zero
and,
Westbrook, reason?
Mill Street,
Mill
is that
Street.
a good one to start with?
It doesn't matter which one we start with.
Is there any issues on these, such as deferral or anything?
Nope.
No?
Nope.
It's all cap rate, we want 5 and the city's at 4.5. I think
Okay.
there's one in there, there's not, I think 41 is a
Okay,
little bit-
we'll start with the assessor, but give us a minute to get organized here and, okay, whenever you're ready, Ms. Moorhan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're looking at Mill Street, file number 19-4687, roll number 12-091-992-500. I'm recommending to maintain the 2020 assessed value of $773,000. If you turn to page 2 of my brief, you'll see it's located on the southeast corner of Waterfront Drive and Mill Street. It is near the baseball diamond and it is partially under the rail line. On page 3, you'll see subject property photos. On page 4, you'll see the income valuation summary for the subject property. We have 28 stalls with a monthly net unit rent of $103.50 a stall. This is what we apply to the exchange area. This is what the model applies to the exchange area that we have used for 2020. We have a 4.5% cap rate for a value of $773,000. On the bottom of my page 5, you'll see comparables. They range from $92.84 a stall, upwards of $300.74 a stall. All of these comparables are in close proximity to the subject property. Comparable number 13 is at Portage in Maine, or 13 I should say. Comparable 14 and 15 are actually a little bit outside of the exchange. They're inferior parking lots, so 14 and 15 are inferior parking lots, which are located on about Hargrave Street and McDermott. The remainder of the properties are all in the heart of the exchange district in close proximity to the subject property. Again, we've discussed our cap rate at length. Our cap rate is 4.5%. We have the very long income mailer that was submitted for the subject property and the ball diamond and all of the information that was in it, which is why it is very long. The actual rates for the subject property are found on page 43. They're charging $220 a stall and $185 a stall. A typical expense ratio for parking is about 45%. At $185 a stall with a typical expense ratio is about $101.75. At $220 a stall at a typical expense ratio is about $121 a stall. So looking at the gross rates that they're actually charging in this area, or for this particular lot, which as of the reference date were waitlisted, is very much in line with the net rent applied by our model, which is supported by the market comparables, which have been given to us from income and expense mailers. It's my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Story, do you have questions?
Yes.
Okay.
You did mention in your dissertation that some portion of this particular surface parking lot is under the High Line, so there's no development opportunities for the site,
No, which is why we're on an income approach to value.
and your income approach is reflecting 4.5 cap that may or may not anticipate reinvestment opportunity or development opportunities.
Where we do mass appraisal, like I said before, when you look at properties that have development opportunities, you're looking at way lower cap rates than 4.5%.
On the estimation, those are good, those are questions.
Thank you. Mr. Diamond, questions?
No questions.
Mr. Lordo?
No questions.
I'll ask a question I think I asked before. You don't have any sales here that are showing the cap rate for parking lots.
No, just my verbal presentation, Mr. Chairman.
Just what?
My verbal presentation as well as the cap rate information that's in the brief.
That's all my questions. Thank you. Mr. Story, if you would like to take us through your...
Yes, thank you. Part of the master lease with the city of Winnipeg on the ballpark required that the ballpark control all the access points under the High Line to get into the ballpark from what was initially planned to be the plaza, which is right at the end of Portage Avenue. The public did it differently. They found different ways to get into the main area by the grandstand, not the plaza. The plaza became parking. So these are some of the parking lots that were required to be controlled. They don't fit the model, the city's model. Some of these are used for staff in the season, in the fall season. They're not, I don't know that they're all available for monthly parking. I'm not sure that they are. That wouldn't make sense. We have to look after the ballpark player. So our position is that there's no, we haven't seen any evidence of cap rate compression. 5% was used, I believe, last year. I believe it should be used again on this particular property. We have something, if you could just go to, from our brief page 2, you'll see the rail line on, and the rail line, what happens is there's safety guidelines being developed and implemented, passed in 2017, but not yet enforced, and that's increasing setbacks for rail safety. That will further impair the development opportunity in this property. So they're just, these are probably the highest and best use, and they're required by the ballpark for staff, for players, and for customers when there's games. If you go to our page 3 of our brief, you'll see these are all the ballpark parking lots that were required to meet the lease with the city of Winnipeg. It says 41 Westbrook, 40 Westbrook Mill, Thistle, Pioneer. And you can see the city is at 4.5% cap rate. They're using their model of $1,242 a year. We're okay with all of that. The only thing we disagree with is the cap rate. We don't believe there's any basis of cap rate compression. As a matter of fact, we're getting close, much to all of our chagrin. 25 years has almost passed. The lease on the ballpark comes up in 2.5 years. So there's even some uncertainty as to what kind of demand there will be on that parking. They'll still be used for parking, I'm sure, for downtown, because you can walk to the central business district. But that's also a risk. I mean, the tenant isn't confirmed yet for the ballpark on an ongoing basis. We hope it will be soon. So I'd like a 5% cap rate, consistent. I don't think the city has proven to the board that there's any justification for compression in cap rate. There have been no sales. We talked at length about it. You can have a cap rate that reflects plus or minus risk if you have development opportunity. If there's no other development opportunity, this is as good as you get. And if the city wanted to, they could go on we could go on an actual cost basis, but we accept the model. So that's our position. And those are the arguments for all of these properties. There's 6 of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions of Mr. Story?
No, I have no questions,
No
Mr.
questions.
Chairman.
Mr. Lorendo? Questions?
No.
Mr. Diamond?
No questions.
So these lots, I have one question. These lots are rented out during the day?
Yes.
They're all rented out?
Yeah, some are monthly, in the off-season they're rented out monthly.
Can then,
There's scattered parking, and they're also rented out, I think there's
Can baseball fans rent these during the summer when they go to the game?
This particular stuff, under the High Line, this, at the end, at Mill, Zero Mill, are used, I think, primarily for staff. The plaza at the front, right by the entranceway, where the clubhouse is used for handicap parking in the, on game day, and I think staff use some of the parking on Mill Street. But for the most part, it's leased out in the off-season on a monthly basis.
And for the record, neither the assessor nor you have presented any cap rate sales for parking lots.
No, these are not available for sale. We have something called eminent domain. City of Winnipeg would not allow the sale of these parking lots. It's incumbent upon their lease that they provide, that the ballpark provide them to have them maintain the master lease.
Okay, that answers my question.
Can I ask a redirect based on that?
Go ahead.
You indicate that the city won't allow the sale of these. Does the city own this particular property?
No, but the city can, first of all, you need about 4 levels of approval to do development in this particular area.
I'm not asking, I was just asking who the owner was.
City, well, they do some, 41 Westbrook they own, 110
I was
Pioneer
asking
Mill.
about this particular.
Mill?
Yeah.
No, I think Mill is owned by the ballpark people.
By the ballpark?
Related to the ballpark people.
But who's the actual real property owner? Like the ballpark leases
Well, I think
it?
they're owned by CN on 9,000-year leases, I think you know this.
I was just trying to clarify some of the
Yeah, what
statements
happened
that
is,
were
just so
made.
you know, and this speaks to why there's no redevelopment opportunity.
But
The
CN
city-
owns it and
You asked
leases.
the question, I want to answer it because it's
I
important.
just wanted to clarify that the city wasn't the owner and that CN was
On that property.
on this property.
However,
Okay,
the city has to approve any development, as does CN, as does CP, even though they don't necessarily have trackage going through. Anything in urban cores now have to be approved by all levels. The city has to approve it. If you read the Free Press yesterday and today, they've had massive archaeological finds on the site. Development's going to be very, very difficult, but it's not allowed by the city. They wouldn't allow development, and you can't develop close to Highline anyway.
I wasn't asking.
Okay, I think
Yeah,
you
but
answered
Mr.
the
Story, you
question.
did say that it couldn't be sold, which is not correct. Can't be developed.
But it
But
couldn't be sold
somebody-
either. What
some-
happened?
Somebody could buy it, they can't restrict the
Well,
sale.
with due respect, Mr. Diamond, Mr. Schindelman had to try, was forced to try and buy it, and Mr. Cates buy it to CN. CN agreed initially to sell it, and then they
Right.
said, but we need unfettered access to the High Line forever, and as a result,
Okay, well,
they
if
couldn't sell
If
it.
CN is not gonna sell it, then it can't be bought by somebody.
Exactly.
But if
It
CN
can't
decided
be-
to sell it, they could sell it to whoever they wanted to.
If they agreed, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
If they ever
But
shut the
need-
rail line down.
But they
Yes,
need
no,
the
it's not
High Line,
fine.
they need unfettered access to the High Line. They have to be able to go up there and fix things that happen on the High Line.
They can keep an
So-
easement. They sell with an easement.
There's thousands of dollars in legal fees spent to try to get this done, to meet the city requirement. Trust me,
Okay, to me it was only a piece of paper, but okay.
yeah.
Okay? Okay,
Tough
that,
crowd.
So this
Yeah,
is Zero
that-
Westbrook.
that concludes Mill Street.
Yeah, this was Mill Street.
This was Mill Street. We will move on to 41 Westbrook.
Okay, and as I, just 1 second, Mr. Chair, I think there's a recommendation that you're accepting.
Yes, I'm making a recommendation to reduce the 2020 assessed value from $2,801,000 to $2,650,000. This is file number 19-4677, roll number 12-093-800500. This is a situation where our model defaulted to the land and we earned the income due to its proximity to the High Line. There are development opportunities near the High Line. The Richardson Center parking lots are currently being developed, and that is in close proximity, it's actually right beside this parking lot. But the land rate from our model was on the high side based on the sales that we have. Being not close to proximity to the rail line, there are development opportunities, but they are limited. So the income approach to value was the most appropriate one. And my recommendation is based on my page 5 at 96 stalls with a monthly night unit rent of $103.50 a stall, with a 4.5% cap rate for a value of $2,650,000.
Thank you. Mr. Story, are you,
We're very close, but I'd like to be consistent with the other properties, so I make 5% cap rate. and that is 2,384,640. And to further complicate matters, 41 West, yes, you just want to say something?
Oh, no, I was just saying my recommendation, and he had asked if you were accepting it, so I was just gonna continue with my
Yes.
presentation, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, we will, thanks. Thanks for the help. We will continue with the assessor's presentation,
Sorry, I just didn't wanna get off
Yeah.
track.
but I had to ask Mr. Story if
I was accepting it,
if you
yeah.
were accepting it.
So again, this is 41 Westbrook. It's located on the east side of Westbrook Street near the baseball diamond. It's on the west side of the rail line. If you turn to page 2 of my brief, you'll see the aerial photo of the subject property. You'll see the neighboring property. It used to be 2 parking lots that is currently being developed by the Richardson Center. On page 3, you'll see subject property photos. On page 5, as I discussed, my income valuation summary at $103.50. My comparables all in close proximity to the subject property. They all are operated by parking management companies with the exception of comparable number 14. They all offer monthly, casual, evening and weekend parking very similar to the subject property. A statement was made on the previous property that staff and things like that park in all of these properties. Based on the information that I have gathered, this particular property is the only one that staff actually park in. You'll note if you look on page 43, it's Goldeyes Lot 4, 313. They charge reserved parking of $190 and random parking September to May. Because they're, the outer area of this parking lot, so if you look on page 2, the ring around the outside is actually for the staff and the players, and they offer that parking to them at no cost from those times. So Impark actually offers that parking from September to May at a lower rate because they have to actually tell their parkers, you cannot park here for a certain amount of time, which is different than the previous property because the Impark details do not say that. If you buy monthly parking there, you have the monthly parking. To my knowledge, this is one of the properties where Impark says, you can get parking here at this rate, but you do have to leave from this time to this time. So I just wanted to clarify that, and other than that, everything in the previous commentary stands.
Thank you. Questions,
I-
Mr. Story?
Are you aware that the site is on the contaminated properties list?
I don't have that information, it's not been presented as evidence, so I,
Okay. Mr. McGovern and Mr. McCray from the ballpark had a visit of the site about 6 months ago. Did you get a report on that? I'll bring it up on my own. You talked about the staff parking. The center portion is used for the players, you're absolutely right. The players, there's about 30 that have vehicles that park in that center part. But the staff, there's another 400 people that work it with ticket takers, concessions, et cetera, and they park on the Mill Street. I used to park on Mill Street I was treated as an employee. So that's where they park. So there's 2 different staff parking. The players are staff, but they park on 41, you're absolutely right. It's only for clarification, doesn't mean anything to the board, but I wanted you to get it right, because you're very particular, so I wanted to make sure you knew that. That's all my questions.
Questions?
I have no questions.
Mr. Lorigal?
No.
I have no questions. Will Mr. Story take us through your information?
Okay. Again, same argument, 5%. This one is a little bit unique in terms of, it is butting the High Line. It would have significant redevelopment restrictions, not yet totally determinable, and would be reflected in the 5% cap rate. There's no, again, no evidence of a reduction in, sorry, it's in Westbrook, so just a moment. 41 Westbrook, that's better. So we'd ask for the 5% cap rate, I won't belabor the point. Lots of challenges, restrictions on redevelopment, This was formerly Westbrook Service, which was a service station many years ago. It was contaminated to the level that could be used for parking. That's the reason that it was part of the master lease on the ballpark. That is city-owned property. It will have to be remediated if sold. And they actually put in cobblestone on this parkade and made it look like, from the Richardson building, you can see a baseball diamond, because they're colored cobblestone, which is almost impossible to snow clean and whatnot. And there's a reason that the middle of the parkade is not electrified, so you can't use it in the winter if you wanted to. Or you can, but you could park it. So I'm asking for $2,384,640, which is based on 5% versus 4.5%, using the city's model of $103.50. Same arguments, thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions? Ms.
No, thank you, Mr.
Ms. on the panel?
No questions.
Okay, no questions from
All
anybody.
they did is change the captions.
No.
That would take us to 0 Westbrook, item number 7.
Yeah. File number 194879.
So file number 19-4879, roll number 13-060-805-000. The address is 0 Westbrook Street. I'm recommending to reduce the 2020 assessed value from $762,000 to $607,000. If you turn to page 2, you'll see the aerial photo of the subject property showing its location on the east side of Westbrook Street. This is actually part of the 41 Westbrook parking lot, but because this is owned by CN and not the city, which the previous property was, they're on 2 different roll numbers, although they're both leased to the same person, which is why they're on 2 different roll numbers in the same parking lot. The Ball Diamond has a lot of stuff happening like that, so you'll see a lot on this docket today just like that. So similar to the same recommendation I made on the previous property, 22 stalls at a monthly net unit rent of $103.50 a stall for 4% cap rate for $607,000. Again, you'll see the income and expense mailer that has been submitted to, submitted for the subject property. And then you'll see the in-park details showing again the same in-park details as previous, that some of these stalls are not available to the public for a certain amount of time. So my presentation, I'm happy to answer any questions.
And I'm fine.
That's it, no questions? No questions either from,
No questions.
no questions from me, sorry. Okay, Mr. Story, take us through your,
Okay, again, we'll carry the same arguments forward, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
We're asking for 5%, we have no evidence of cap rate compression. Even if there were, it wouldn't be on this particular property. The cap rate that has been offered, we suggest to you, is partially because of opportunities to develop these properties. Surface parking lots, in my opinion, are for the most part inventorying opportunities, waiting till the opportunities come along. You don't have that situation at the ballpark. So 5 is probably an unrealistically low cap rate. 4.5 we don't see evidence of, but we request you carry forward 5% this year from last year. These properties have limited or no redevelopment opportunity. They're owned by different owners. Heard it all before. So I'd ask that the assessment be based on 5%.
546,000.
5 is
It's on his sheet.
500.
546,480, correct,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you. Questions, Ms. Wareham?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Questions of the panel on Mr. Story?
No.
No. Okay, I have no questions either. Thank you. That will take us to 110 Pioneer, item number 9.
We're looking at file number 19-4877, roll number 12-097-639-300. The address is 110 Pioneer. I'm recommending to reduce the 2020 assessed value from $2,391,000 to $1,297,000. This is a service parking lot located near the Ball Diamond between Pioneer Avenue and William Stevenson Way. There's 47 stalls. If you turn to page 2, you'll see an aerial photo of the subject property. There's two roll numbers within this one parking lot. This is the larger of the two. On page 3, you'll see subject property photos. On page 5, you'll see the income valuation summary for the subject property, showing 47 stalls at a monthly net unit rent of $103.50 a stall. We have a 4.5% cap rate on this property for a value of $1,297,000. On page 13, you'll see the subject property rates that are charged by Impark. This is Water and Pioneer, lot number 87. And they charge $190 a stall as well as casual hourly parking. So my presentation, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Story, questions? I assume that the recommendation is not,
No, because we'd like
What's the
5%.
5%?
yes. Okay, so
And I'll divide it.
You already got the number down there.
1,167,000.
67,480, correct.
Questions of the assessor?
No, it's fine.
No? Panel members, questions of the assessor? Okay, so take us through your information, what you're asking.
He did it already.
That was it.
That was it, 5%.
I'm a person of few words.
Okay. Okay, that,
It's
well,
all capped.
any
It's
questions
all
of,
capped.
any
Five
questions
words,
of,
asking for 5% cap rate.
None.
any questions of Mr. Story?
Oh, no,
No.
I already said no, thank you.
Okay, that concludes 110 Pioneer. We will go to 0 Pioneer, which is item number 10.
We're looking at file number 19
Oh, hang on, excuse me. There's a 0 and a question mark behind it. The reason 0.
This is
We're doing
0.
0 right now.
File number 19-4880. Roll number 12, 091-996-100. I'm recommending to reduce the 2020 assessed value from $282,000 to $248,000. This is the smaller of the two roll numbers that is in the parking lot that we just spoke of. You'll see the aerial photo on page 2. You'll see the income valuation summary on page 5. We have 9 stalls at a monthly net unit rent of $103.50 a stall with a 4.5% cap rate for a value of $248,000. Again, I've already gone through all this information. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, we'll see if anybody has any questions. Mr. Story, do you have any questions?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, panel members?
None.
No questions, I have no questions. Mr. Story, you'd like to tell us?
Again, carrying forward all our arguments from the previous file with respect to cap rate.
Yes.
We ask that we indicate that there's no merit in the compression of cap rate. We ask cap rate be set at 5%, all of it as per the assessor's model, and that results in an assessment of $223,560. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Questions of Mr. Story?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Panel members? No questions? I have no questions. Thank you very much. That concludes the 0 Pioneer, and we will move on to question mark Pioneer, which is item number 11.
It's not on his list.
No, it isn't.
It is not. It's file number 19-4856.
Oh, it's not on my list.
No.
You put that in there.
There's a one on the list with a number on Pioneer, I believe.
Oh, you got nothing on that one.
It's not there, sorry.
Must have been a freebie.
But I think you want a 5% cap rate, so I think we can pick it
Yes,
up.
you did. You got it right.
Okay,
So we're looking at roll number 12, 097-530-700, and I am recommending to maintain the 2020 assessed value of $1,270,000. If you turn to my page 2, this is probably the most fun parking lot of all of them. If you look at the aerial photo,
Oh, yeah.
this is 4 different pieces. One of them is a street, one of them is just the High Line. If you look over here, we have parking on these 2 squares. So if you just turn your attention over to me. So this is the street, no parking there. This is just the High Line, no parking there. There's no parking on this side because it's just the High Line. There's parking here, and a small amount of parking here. That is how we have come up with our 46 stalls. I counted all of these parking stalls in 2014 for the 2014 appeal, because the agent at the time, the owner had requested that, so I went out and I used landmarks and figured out where everything was. But that's why this looks funny when you look on page 2. Page 3, you'll see more photos of the parts where there is parking. On page 4, you'll see subject property photos. Again, 46 stalls at $103.50 a stall for a 4.5% cap rate. We have $1,270,000. My presentation, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Story, do you have questions of the assessor?
No, I just want to, well, I will ask a question, because I think this is more for the entertainment of the board. If you go to page 2 of your brief, one portion of this assessment roll is actually waterfront drive, is that correct?
I think I said that in my presentation.
No, you did, but I don't know if everybody
I
knows that.
did say it in the
Okay.
presentation. I even had everyone
Thank
look
you.
over for me
Yeah.
to point
If you go to
everything
page
out.
2, you'll see the triangular, is actually waterfront drive. And this is very, as Warren just indicated, this is a very unique property because some of it is under the high line, that's under the concrete. Like under the concrete, the concrete goes right to the ground. Yeah, my position is a 5% cap rate, and everything is fine.
Okay,
Figured that one
no questions?
out.
No
None.
questions.
Okay,
We're on to Thistle.
But
we
you know
will
what?
move on to,
But you know what? If we do this really quickly, I've got to get to my parking meter pretty soon.
This one is
We're
gonna
done.
be quick. This one is not based on a cap rate, so if Mr. Story wants to accept it, it shouldn't affect his position, because this one is no longer a parking lot. It is not being operated as a parking lot, and it has not been operated as a parking lot. If you see this triangular portion.
perhaps you would read it into the roll,
Okay.
please.
File number 12, or 19-4881, roll number 13-060-800, or 0000 Thistle Lane. I'm recommending to reduce the 2020 assessed value from $138,000 to $78,000.
I think you'll grab that and run.
And I accept it.
Done.
Only because it's not a parking lot
It's
anymore.
not a parking lot, it is vacant land.
Okay,
We better take a break so we can go feed his meter.
I'll just need 5 minutes.
Yeah, take the lunch.
We're done anyway.
well,
Anyway,
I think we're done.
Yeah, but we have to do it, like,
Yeah, but you're gonna have to.
But,
I have to run out.
this concludes the hearing for Mr. Story and
We'll
for
take a 10-minute break.
Ms. Warham. Just one second, one
Yeah.
second. That concludes the hearing for Ms. Warham and for Mr. Story.
Yes, thank you very much.
And we'll take a break.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
You got 3 guys in here that normally chairs. We all call.
You're all calling.